Can anybody hear me? I'm frightened, Danny M. I'm frightened. I'll get you, my pretty.
River driving on the second dawn, floating on the slippery log, sleeping in a frozen bog. My girl's waiting for me, hard-boiled eggs 3 times a day. Wet as beavers, we hit the hay, not much sleep, but great good pay. My girl's waiting for me. Big friends Joe and I went out to break a jam, and I heard him shout, "Friendly guard," and the jam went out. And my girl's waiting for me. The big French Joe, the logs drowned him. He had no chance to fight or swim.
Hey, I had no preparation this morning. I just woke up about 3 minutes ago and ran in here, and I started telling myself, hey, I'm afraid. What is this about anyway? I said to myself, Stevie, I said, you're not ready for this. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't go down there and turn on that camera. I'm afraid. And then I got to thinking to myself, what is the purpose of this exercise? Is the purpose to deliver the perfect message? Is the perfect, is the reason that I do this live stream, is it to be perfect? No. The true purpose of this live stream is, to reduce my fear. That's what it's all about. As I go to this mental, emotional gym, I want to reduce my fear of speaking my heart authentically and genuinely without concern of what the reaction is going to be, so that the pure essence of myself will come forward in whatever way it decides to take. And so what does it matter if I run down here 7 minutes late and punch the button and turn it on? And something's going to come out, and something authentic, something real. I love that movie, Walk the Line with Johnny Cash. Sam Phillips, he says, all right, let's bring it home. Let's bring it home. If you was laying out there in that gutter dying and you had a chance to sing one song, one song that people would want to hear before your dirt, one song that would let God know how you felt about your time here on earth, one song that would sum you up, you telling me that's the song you'd sing, that same old Jimmy Davis tune about your peace within and how it's real and how you're going to shout it? Or would you sing something different, something real, something you felt? Because I'm telling you right now, that's the kind of song that people truly want to hear. That's the kind of song that really saves people. It's not about believing in God, Mr. Cash. It's about believing in yourself. And that is why I come and do this day after day. And I have had fear about, what's going to happen, if I share my heart. One thing I've noticed, boys and girls, moms and dads, is that when I share my authentic heart and people learn things about me, there's a healing thing that happens to other people, and that is the true prize. That's the brass ring that I'm after. When I pour my heart out and let you know things about my real life human being experience, it makes people, especially when I do live presentation and people are in a room where they feel safe to talk to other human beings, there's a healing thing that happens to other people when I myself become authentic and genuine. And I encourage you to do the same. To share with people the good, the bad, the weird, the ugly, the out of place, the illogical, the silly. They say if something's worth doing, it's worth looking ridiculous in the beginning and in the process. It's worth doing badly. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly in the beginning. And what I have found, though, is that I get to help in healing. I get to help being a healer. And how do I do that? Well, I just lay it out there the way it has happened to me, what I have seen, what I have felt, what I have experienced in this world. My true experience about God, about ancient history, about my notions of the supernatural, which I consider there's not that much supernatural. There's only natural God-given experiences. And the things that we're taught are weird or strange or out of the ordinary or things that'll get us kicked out of the group. Those things are natural to us human beings. The reason you don't hear that much about it is because people are hiding. They're hiding in this cloak called normal, and they don't want you to know that they had an imaginary friend when they were little and it was real to them. And they'll laugh and say it was my imagination. The reason I bring that one up is because I was with my mom, who I was down in Houston this weekend, and hung out with my mom, and she once again brought up several imaginary friends that she had when she was little, and we started talking to her about that, and she, with great joy, she recalled for us a lady that would come to her when she was a little girl. My mom was an only child, and when she was a little girl, there was this dignified older lady who would come and play with her and be kind to her and help her through those sort of times when she was by herself. And she even told her parents about them, and her parents, God bless them, my grandparents, were supportive of this. And the lady's name was Mrs. Tinkatonk. And Mrs. Tinkatonk, she could describe for you how she wore this, I think the way I remember is sort of a wool dress, maybe a coat and a little handbag. And I picture a kind of a Mrs. Doubtfire sort of a character. And but not only was there Mrs. Tinkatonk, there were the Indians, and there was this sort of pack of little Indians that followed them around too. And from what I loosely gather also, these imaginary friends, that Mrs. Tinkatonk was sort of the distinguished, the good side, and the Indians were more of the mischievous side. The Indians might tell her to do things or do things themselves that were outside of the rules, out of bounds, and so anyway, as we got to talking to Mom, what I realized was, and maybe she doesn't even realize herself, but I believe that those characters are real, and that those spiritual entities are there to bring comfort and entertainment and protection. And I just because I've had so many experiences now in my 61 years of life, that I know that there are non-visible entities that help me and guide me and protect me, and they are of God, and they are of the whole. And so whenever a child tells me that, or when an 85-year-old child tells me that when they were younger that they had imaginary friends, I don't really, when they can describe them, their personality, their appearance, and their characteristics, and they can remember those characters today just as they were 80 years ago, I don't consider those to be imaginary. I consider those to be real. And I consider that, we have systematically labeled anyone who tells us about visions out of the right brain intuitive. We've slapped a label on them of being weird and odd and woo, and all these things, all these negative connotations that would distance them from the group. And we have a primal need to belong to our group, our tribe, our people. Anybody knows, you put someone in solitary confinement, they're just going to go crazy. And it happens down to the last man. But we take our people, as a society, we take the people who are, we label them as mentally ill, and we push them off around, and we tell them that they're sick and push them away from us, and it drives them crazy. That's what makes them crazy. It's not the things they're experiencing so much themselves. And I'm certainly no psychiatrist, but I would be quick to say that a huge portion of those that we deem mentally ill or learning impaired or dyslexic, and all these various labels are simply people that operate much more out of their right brain intuitive than out of the left brain logical. And if there's the gross imbalance in this world is not the imaginative. It's the people who are so locked into the left brain logical that they're destroying the whole planet. We're leaving millions of people to suffer in hunger and poverty, while you got this collection of elites that is at the top, just gorging themselves on the resources of this world. That is the mental illness, folks. It is a mental illness when you've got institutions that call themselves the American Medical Association or the pharmaceutical industry or what have you, and they create cures. They can withhold cures for disease when all they want to do is make money on the management of your disease. They don't want to cure people. And it's bad business model. It's mental illness, folks, when the business model supersedes the needs of man. That's mental illness. That's insanity. And as they say, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, you're insane, because we keep doing the same pattern that enriches a smaller and smaller group of people and impoverishes a larger and larger group of people, and that is a sickness of the left brain logical, not the intuitive. The intuitive is the connector to the heart and to the feminine and to the small still voice, to the inner child, and that is way out of balance with the dominant left brain logical. And so not to abandon either one, but to bring balance back into the world, back into the human consciousness. That is the aim of this little show, and I do it in any old way I know how. And so I encourage you to try to get in tune with that any way you know how. the way I do it, in part, is I turn this thing on and I begin to talk and I begin to flow and I begin to. It is really in that book, The Artist's Way. They have an exercise called the morning pages, in which you just sit down with a pen and you write any old thing that comes to your mind. It's called the morning pages, and you're not writing to share it with anybody. You're not writing for any particular aim. You're simply writing with a pen or a pencil onto paper, and the act of handwriting is somehow therapeutic to people, and I would agree with that. Handwriting is an important thing, and so when you do that, when you free flow onto the paper day after day for 3 pages a day, something happens. And over time, you'll see that. Something happens to where the left brain logical doesn't care about that, all right? It's not any particular aim that you're trying to achieve with those morning pages. So you write these things, and so it relaxes the left brain logical. And the right brain intuitive, being free of any kind of responsibility, it is just simply allowed to create. The right brain intuitive begins to rise. And so those morning pages become expressive and poetic, and ideas begin to flow up from your memory or from the deeper well, from the wider consciousness, and those expressive things. The left brain logical is a guardian. I've heard it said the difference between the left and right brain is like the lawyer and the beagle, according to one of my great teachers, Roy Williams, over at the Wizard Academy in Austin, and I love that place. And if you go to Wizard Academy, he's all about bringing out the strange, the weird, the free-flowing ideas. He's an advertising and marketing genius and a wonderful teacher. He's got a school over there. But what he talks about, he wrote this little book called Free the Beagle. And the beagle being that intuitive part of the brain that's just ready to sniff the air and run out after anything. But then the left brain is the logical. That's the lawyer. And the lawyer says, no, 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 no. The lawyer is constantly shutting down the beagle, keeping the beagle on a leash, and not allowing for, anything out of the ordinary. But the Broca's area of the brain is kind of the gateway, and when you get and that takes more explanation than I feel like going into right now. But suffice to say that in the middle of your brain is a door. All right, and this left brain logical is constantly keeping that door shut. It is going to decide what is good and what is not good, what is correct and what is not correct. And but there are keys to opening the door, and allowing that beagle, that wild animal, that excitable, happy, joyful, creative, curious little animal to come loose and play and run free. There's ways to do that, and your job, ladies and gentlemen, if you so choose, is to find that key. Maybe it's music, maybe it's some kind of expression, maybe it's the morning pages, that this free flowing thought, meditation, dancing, chanting, drumming, all of the ancestral arts that were taken away from all the indigenous people on this planet, pretty much. They between the political and the religious, they systematically went around the planet and stripped out all the ceremonial practices where people celebrated their divine connection, and the dancing and the free flow of movement and the silliness and the laughter and the not being so controlled. That's largely been taken away. The stories and the actual languages have been stripped out of people, and so in whatever way you are able, in whatever way that brings you joy, to allow yourself to create without fear. Allow yourself to play like a child without fear. Play like nobody's looking. that's what I do here on this camera. When, the whole world might be looking for all I know, but I don't care. I'm going to play however I want to. And that is the purpose of this exercise. These children, according to Ken Robinson, and go look at the famous TED Talk with Sir Ken Robinson about education in this country. It's fabulous. And he talks about children, and children are willing to have a go at it. He tells a story about this little girl, and she was always quiet in class, never engaged in class, never did anything. She just sat in the back of the room. But the teacher had an art project, and that little girl was just all over it. She was back in the back of the room, and she was, drawing something back there, all excited, putting glitter on it, and who knows what. And so the teacher goes back there and said, "Little Janie, what are you doing?" She goes, "Oh, I'm drawing a picture of God." And he goes, the teacher goes, well, nobody knows what God looks like. And Janie goes, "They will in a minute." and she knows. All right, she's not afraid of what other people think. All right, and that if there's any core message to this live stream this morning, and it's what I bounced right out of bed for to come and talk to you about, is about fear. And according to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is something to be feared. Fear of all these different things, and constantly have to be on guard about all this different stuff. Fear is a good thing, if you got a saber-toothed tiger chasing you. Fear is a good thing if you see an angry mob coming down the street, and you've got to run off or defend yourself somehow. These things, but fear has become the drug of choice for this country and much of the world. And that really won't serve us in the end, because we cannot evolve into who we need to be. We cannot bring about that balance in the right brain has no ability to function if the left brain is constantly in fear, constantly in control mode, constantly in that default mode of thinking, looking for the Indians over the next hill. The right brain intuitive must be freed. That beagle must be free to roam and yowl and sniff and look for whatever it wants to. And it's fear that keeps us away from our heart's desire. It's fear that says, "No, I don't want to try that new business." Fear that says, "No, I don't want to paint pictures because what might people think?" It's fear that says, "I know I could be a baseball player, but I'm just, what if I fail? What if I'm no good?" Reminds me of Back to the Future when Marty McFly and his father before him, and that's a good a picture there. Marty McFly in the beginning of the movie is just like his father. And he says, what if I'm no good? What if they say I'm no good? What if they say you ain't got any talent? What if they say, "Get out of here, kid, you got no future"? I just don't know if I could take that kind of rejection. There's a lot to be learned from that. And look where his father went, until he went back to the future. And so many people live these lives of quiet desperation, and they do not strive towards the life which they envision, because they are afraid, and they do not build a world that everyone can enjoy. And there's this constant reptilian. My daddy used to call it the snake brain. I wish my dad was still alive so I could ask him exactly what he meant by this. But Dad used to have an expression called the snake brain, and it came from some book he read, and I have a feeling it was some kind of book about reptilians and this ancient race of sort of evil beings that came here to the earth from outer space. And that you look through all kinds of history, and there's this sort of evil reptilian kind of mind that they refer to. And anyway, that reptilian brain will not serve. It will not serve you. It will not serve our world. And so whatever we can do to bring up a balance, and I believe when your brain, your consciousness reaches a certain balance, there's a harmony that happens. And you see, every once in a while you meet someone like this, and there's nothing that rattles them, nothing that makes them flustered. They are solid as the rock of Gibraltar. Their mind is clear. Their demeanor is happy and elevated, and everywhere they go, they're in a mode of trying to identify people who are feeling lowly and lift them somehow. I've heard it said, and rightly so, that the high self-esteem seeks to lift other people around it. It's already high. It does not require being recognized or stroked somehow. And so it raises its own self-esteem by the raising of others, and thereby getting higher and higher self-esteem. The low self-esteem is constantly in a mode of squishing other people. The low self-esteem gets a cheap thrill of disparaging someone, or belittling someone, or telling a joke that they know is going to press a button on someone, and they get an artificial high by this sense of superiority that they get by lording over other people emotionally. It's not just physical abuse that hurts people. In fact, I would say that physical abuse is in the minority of the abuses. People do get beat up, but you'll hear these kids say, and I know that I'm among them, that they'd say, I'd rather my dad just beat the shit out of me than talk to me that way. It was the words that hurt more than anything physical that was done to me. The words are so critically important. How you choose the words, what you do with those magic spells, how you paint emotional, vibrational pictures with your words. All right, and you can cast them into the very soul of another person, especially a young person, or a gentle female person, or a gentle male person. Your words carry such power, and it's important to always remember the awesome responsibility you have with your words. And I know I've messed up with my words, but they are in fact like magic spells, and you can speak life into someone, or you can speak death into them, and you can make someone feel so much better with just a few words. I've said before, I go into the grocery store or somewhere, and I'll see someone that doesn't feel so good. There was this guy, I pulled into this place in Houston just the other day, and my tires were low, and it was just started to sprinkle a little bit, and I was going to pull it up under this garage, but there were some cars in there, and I asked the manager, hey, did he have some air I could put in the tires? And he sent out this lowly little guy, and he looked unhappy. I could feel his vibration when he came out to check my tires. I didn't go in. He was told to come out and help me. So he comes out in the rain, and he was not happy. And when I asked him, I said, hey, how you doing? And he looked at me and goes, not very well. I said something like, I said, are you doing all right? And he goes, no, not really. And I didn't really know what to say to him, but he went about, sort of checking the air in all my tires and pumping them up, and I tried to make some little small talk, and he wasn't having any. And so even though the service was free, I pulled out a $5 bill, and I said, hey, let me give you this. And he was like, oh, you don't have to. And I said, yeah, but I want to. But you know why? And he goes, why? And I said, because I love you. And he just lit up like a Christmas tree. He was like, man, I needed that. I needed that. And those magic words of love just penetrated right through that shell that he had, this negative, sort of, demeanor that he had. This there was like a mist hanging over this guy, and he was greasy, and I could tell he was tired. And I gave him a little tip, and I told him I loved him, and he went away, and I said, thank you for helping me. I really appreciated it. And it just lifted. You could see his physical frame, his posture lift, and his shoulders kind of went back, and his head kind of went a little higher, And I don't know how long that lasted, but I pumped a drug into that guy that he needed. It was like giving a man on the desert, who's dying of thirst, to give him a little sip of water to help him go on. And those words are like that little sip of water, a little encouragement, a little to realize that not everybody in the world is hard and mean and doesn't care, and to be reminded of our universal connection of spirit and of love, and to deliberately go out and try to raise your fellow man in his suffering. Because everybody suffers. Just to be in one of these damn human bodies is to suffer. And on top of which, there's so many other things that plague our world. And just, watching the news and being in this mindset of things are bad and things are dangerous and, the world is, an ugly place. To share some of the most beautiful words with a stranger who doesn't know you. And you got to be a little careful about it because you don't want to give the wrong impression. But to genuinely share from your heart words of love, words of encouragement, words of joy, and painting a bright picture. This guy that I work with in the Galapagos Islands, his name was Pablo Davila. And he was one of my fellow scuba divers when I was a dive guide in the Galapagos Islands. And he says, "What's your name? What your apellido? What's your last name?" And I said, "Dyer, Steve Dyer." And he goes, Dyer. Ah, Tinto. He who adds color, right? And I always loved that. It was a realization came over me about my own name when he reflected back to me in Spanish what my name meant. And it is a metaphor for what we all are. We are all tintos. We are all painters of pictures. We are all artists of vibrational frequency. And we go about it in the way that we put out our vibration every day. We go about it in the words that we spread. We are painting pictures on the hearts of men. We are painting a vibration that actually permeates every living thing, which is pretty much everything. If you listen to the physicist, there is no solid thing. It's only illusion. This is actually moving, vibrating, living energy right here in this solid cup. It seems solid, but it's not. It's alive, all right? And the quicker you understand that simple thing, which is deceiving and counterintuitive to the eye, you bang on things, they seem solid, but they're not. They're actually living energy that's holding small parts of matter together. And so when you paint the pictures with your words and with your vibration, with your eyes, the communication that you give to people is so critically important, and it will begin to balance your left and right brain if you're not only aware of it, but you begin to practice the art of this magic, the art of painting vibrational pictures in the world. And what kind of picture are you going to go out and paint today, huh? Mr. Picasso, Mr. Da Vinci, Mr. Artist of vibrational frequency. What words will you use? How will you deliver them? Will it be, when you walk into the office today, will it be, "Oh, good morning," Or will it be, "Good morning, it's nice to see you"? How's it going to be? how are you deliberately going to shape the world today? And I know it's not easy. I'm talking to myself. And there have been many times in my life that I'm not painting pretty pictures out there. In fact, there's sort of a twisted joy, and it's kind of that similar drug that I'm talking about. There's a joy in bringing people down, bringing everybody down. Let's see if we can throw a wrench in everybody's happiness and bring them down. Let's poke at somebody in a sensitive place. Let's stick them, where we know that it's going to cause them a twinge, and somehow we'll get a giggle out of that, because we've said something for the shock value, and it's actually hurt them. When we walk away from them, their vibration is lower for having been with us. Is that the artist that you want to be? Is that how you want the world to be? Is that how you want the world to treat you? And I believe in this whole notion of karma, and that what goes around comes around. And when you put out something, you have to take responsibility for it. So you better be putting out good things, and every little thing that you've done, that you've thought, that you create in the world with your magic. It comes back to you. It grows in your life, and you carry it with you. And if you've been creating negative karma, it's like a bank account. You've got to pay it off. You've got to pay off the debt, and so thereby you have to take responsibility for everything. And so trying your best to add to positive karma in this world is a good thing. And call it what you will. The Christian community tends to scoff at that notion, but I think it applies. I think it's a basic sort of divine law that karma is really what we're here to experience and learn about. Is how to smooth out our vibration to be creators of beautiful things, and not creators of fear and anger and frustration and suffering. Not to create suffering, but to relieve suffering in all its many forms. And so do the best you can with that. But being in fear, the reason I ran down here and turned on this thing without any preparation this morning is because my exercise is not to please you. It's not to deliver the greatest speech in the world. It's not to prove anything. The main reason that I come down and I do these live streams is because I don't want to be afraid anymore. I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm not going to be that way anymore. And I'm going to be whoever I am, and I'm going to develop whoever I am uniquely to the very best of my ability. I'm going to be the best Stevie that I can be. And in order to do that, I cannot be constrained by what the world's opinion of me is. I've got to create freely, just as a child painting a picture, just as a person singing a song to the best of their ability. I'm reminded about Elvis Presley, and I heard a story about him one time, among many stories about Elvis. But back when he was young and he was developing his craft, he would invite people over to the house, and they would play some music, and he would see what they could do, and they would sing, or they'd play guitar, or they'd do whatever they knew how to do. And one of the things that Elvis admired in people was their ability to let go and to give it everything they've got without being constrained. If they're going to sing, they bellowed it out. If they're going to play, they play the wildest, hardest, craziest stuff, and they gave it their all, and they did that without being afraid of what the audience may think. They cut loose, baby. They cut loose, and that is exactly the purpose of this exercise in the very best way I know how. And doing it in front of a live audience helps because it is real. I'm not sitting in the shower doing this by myself. and I get feedback. Thank God to all of you who've been giving me feedback and encouragement. And if I've spread a little sunshine, in the world, or provoked a thought, or a question, or what have you, well, I'm blessed. And if you don't like it and you disapprove, well, adios, baby. Take the train. Take the train. Because they say courage is speaking your truth boldly, and then see who hangs around, and therein you will find your tribe. So sing your song, dance your dance, speak your truth, write your pages, and therein you will find. Go into what Joseph Campbell calls enter the darkest part of the forest where there is no path, and the place that's scariest to you. Go in. And therein lies your treasure. The treasure that you seek lies in the darkest part of your forest. So if you're afraid of it, but it excites you, that's probably where you need to go in. And the holy grail of your life, you already know what it is. You know what it is, but it may be covered up with all those woulda, shoulda, coulda type things. All those, it's not realistic. It's not practical. It's not you. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You're not rich enough. You're not pretty enough, or handsome enough. You're not enough. You're not good enough. All right? You're not good enough. And all those things come out of the left brain logical. And it is the right brain intuitive. And I was saying this the other day, and it's true. The right brain intuitive, the heart-centered love side, not the head-centered fear side, but the right-centered love side, is very, very polite. It's very polite. It is willing to wait for you forever. The love side, the creative side, the side that has access to a much higher realm of consciousness, that right brain intuitive is very, very polite, and it will wait patiently for you until you get, until you're tired of all that fear-based, anger-based, looped pattern of thinking, that default mode of thinking, until you get tired. And you may die, and that right brain intuitive is going to sit there patiently waiting for you into the next life. And so it's very polite and patient. In order to get to the right brain intuitive, folks, you have to invite that part of yourself. You have to invite that small, still child, that small, still voice, that inner child, that heart-centered intuitive has to be invited back into your consciousness, back into your life. And you have to be willing to yield your left brain logical to the right brain intuitive. You have to be willing to settle this down and yield, so that and invite that right brain intuitive to come up, so that you can achieve that balance, so you can gain the deep wisdom that it carries. And we're so caught up in the notion that it's all about thinking and achieving goals and driving, when really oftentimes, and it's counterintuitive to us, but oftentimes some of the greatest wisdom in the world comes from putting your mind in neutral. To go out of one's mind simply means to let that right brain or that left brain to be still. All right, still the mind, not prayer, not reciting scripture, not thinking at all, but putting that boat in neutral. And inviting that right brain to come up and to practice like a muscle. That's what I do here. I practice the right brain intuitive. I free-flowing thought, free-flowing words. Straight out of my heart is where I like to be, for this hour. And that's why sometimes I jump from subject to subject, or I think up movies or poems or speeches or sayings. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. according to Nelson Mandela and Marianne Williamson, who wrote that. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. How does that go? Your playing small does not serve the world. You were meant to shine as children do. You're meant to shine. The inner child is meant to shine. You're meant to shine as children do, to manifest the glory of God. And I'm getting the quote wrong, but in the end it says, and as we let our own light shine, we consciously, as we let our own light shine, we consciously give others permission to do the same. And as we let our own light shine, as we liberate our own light, we liberate others. Something like that. But don't miss the point. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, as we may say. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Now take a big whiff of that, all right? Suck that in a little bit. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And what is that all about? It's that deep inside each one of us, universally, inside our spirit, inside us, there is a flame. There is a divine spark that's in each one of us. And we know instinctively that it is so powerful. We don't know what to do with it. If we let that animal out of the cage, there's no telling what's going to happen. All right? So in a way, we're sort of deliberately afraid. It's like we've got a hurricane inside this little box. And man, if I let this baby off the chain, there ain't no telling what's going to happen. I love that quote, Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. It's like we're doing everything we can, and the world does everything it can. From the time we're born, we come into this world with this bright light. And just like my mother, we have these visions. We can see non-physical entities. We know about maybe our past lives. We have out-of-body experiences. We have, these divine experiences. This connection with the divine is real clear, real open, real fresh. But very quickly, the world gets to, covering us up with the dregs of society. The rules, the regulations, the limitations, the sort of the carnal garbage, the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, and all these things are covering us up, covering our little light, and containing us, and it's teaching us. We're taught from early on that that light inside of us that wants to get free off the chain, that light is dangerous, and that it needs to be contained at all cost, and that's what society has been doing to us all along, and whether you believe in some conspiracy theory that says that they're doing that deliberately, or whether it's just the general nature of men controlling groups of men and so forth, I don't know. But one thing I do know is I'm tired of that shit. I'm tired of that stuff. Hey, feels good. My little light's going to shine, all right? And as I go through this exercise, I'm practicing letting my light shine any way it wants to, any way it wants to come out. It's going to come out. And it's not believing in God, Mr. Cash. It's about believing in yourself. And in order to fully develop as a human being, you've got to get off that chain. You've got to get out of that box. You've got to see the world the way you uniquely are gifted to see it, and express oneself in the way that you're uniquely qualified. You are uniquely qualified to be yourself. Think about that for a second. In order to be yourself, in being yourself, you cannot fail. You cannot. You cannot fail being your unique self, because there is no one else like you. And to let that light shine. What is Howard Thurman has a quote, and it says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go do that." Because what the world needs, my friend, is more people who have come alive. And I'll leave you with that. It's rolled through an hour just quicker than, Jack Robinson. Quicker than you can say Jack Robinson. And I love you very, very much. And I encourage you to let your light shine. Let that flame burn bright and for all to see. No matter what the reaction is. Chances are it'll be so bright, they're going to have to wear shades. All right? But you've got to be willing to develop it. You have to realize that you've been subdued and contained and kept on a leash, for quite some time. And it may take time for you to come out of your shell. You have not been used to living outside the box. And so there's some therapy, some time that needs to pass where you practice how to live your authentic self. And as you do that, I promise you, it's going to bring you joy and passion, and most likely will bring you the vision for how you're truly supposed to live. I mean, we just got a few more minutes here on this earth, folks. Tick tock, tick tock. Time is running out. And so carrying out your unique mission has only a few minutes left, so you better get started, and if you haven't already. And I'm talking to myself here. That's why I try to drag myself out of bed and do this every day. And every day that I do it, I feel better. And my vibration is much higher now than when I started this. And that's why it's important that I do it. No matter what the reaction's going to be. I don't care about the reaction anymore. I hope it's good. I hope somebody gets a little something out of this. But I'm not so invested in that. What I'm invested in is bringing up my own right brain intuitive, bringing about a balance that will one day bring up this electromagnetic heart energy and grant me a greater access, a second coming of Christ consciousness. And I believe the more each and every one of us do that, it's infectious. It'll infect the whole world, and our world will change. And it is, in fact, the only thing that will ever change this world, is bringing up each individual's vibration to its highest possible level. And we're not even halfway there. So I love you very, very much. I love you enough to give it to you straight, however it comes to me. And whoever you are, thanks for being an encourager, and go out and have a wonderful day. It's Stevie the Guide here on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. Hey, it's 6 o'clock.
The logs jammed up to the river's rim. My girl's waiting for me.
I love you.
His girl comes to me and cries, if he's dead, my petite, he used to sigh.